item 6. Okay, so item 13 will come after item 5, and then I'll most probably, David, to give you a chance to get, yeah, David, to give you a chance to get away because I know you're not feeling too good. I'll most probably do all yours, and then we'll come on to item 6. Okay? Okay. Making a reasonable adjustment. All right, good evening everybody. It's 5:30 and welcome to this evening's meeting. We're going to start off with the any apologies. I think we've got a full house, haven't we?
You're fully quorate, Chair.
Oh, very nice. So is it okay for me to sign the minutes of the 14th?
Yeah.
That's good. I'll do that in a moment. Declarations of interest. Anybody got any pecuniary interests? You need to advise us and leave the room at the appropriate time. Under item part 2, we do have a part 2 item, which will be item 14. And if there are any members of the public or press, I'll ask them to leave. I'm not sure we are at the moment. And so I'm now going to go into public questions, and we have no public questions as such.
That's correct, Chair. No public questions.
Public questions. Although we've got the councillor wanting to make some statements later on, that's absolutely fine. So we'll go into item 13. It's the future of Northbrook approach. Then we've got a recommendation, and here we are. It's the recommendation is that the executive approves a proposal for a joint partnership between Exeter City Council and the Devon Wildlife Trust to consult on the future of Northbrook approach. David Bartram, can you fill us in, please?
Thank you, Chair. So you'll probably remember there was overwhelming feedback from the last consultation around this site for Northbrook to remain as a publicly accessible green space, increased biodiversity, and the emphasis was on rewilding. So this informs your decision, Chair, to keep this valuable green space and not build on it. So what we're suggesting here is a partnership between the City Council and the Wildlife Trust to consult with local residents and community groups on this vision that we've prepared, the area as a wild arboretum. So this will transform the area into a tree-studded park, enriched with wildflowers, newly planted trees, including a community orchard, together with new wetlands, ponds and pools to enhance the biodiversity. So it is this vision that we're consulting on. I would just like to hand over to the Register of Wildlife Trust to take us through the presentation in more detail.
Perfect, thank you. Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah. Just position this here so I can have one eye to the board at the same time. Oh, thanks, thank you. So yeah, as Dave introduces very well, the Northbrook approach course is in a really important strategic area culturally, but also from a biodiversity perspective as well. And Exeter, you all know, is blessed with, I'd say, national quality natural infrastructure. I'm going to introduce the strategic position of the Northbrook Golf Course itself. But before I do, I thought I'd give a very brief introduction to some of the work Devon Wildlife Trust and the City Council have been doing in partnership since we took on the lease, the 30-year lease of the Valley Parks, May last year. So one of the key themes that we've been focusing on is around community engagement. I mean, Devon Wildlife Trust prides ourselves in our work with volunteer groups and within the community, and reconnecting communities with their local green spaces has been absolutely critical. Doing so in a whole variety of different ways, and these were just some of the statistics since May 2019. So we've held 24 events and activities. That's attracted over 1,000 people which have directly engaged in the park, be that tree planting, volunteer activities like pond creation. So there's been a real buzz from the community around the parks, and it's attracted new people into those areas as well. and not least local school groups. So we have a school, Wild City School programme, and the school children have been reconnected with their parks as special places on their doorstep. We've had over 130 volunteers which have been actively engaged as well. So that gives you a bit of a flavour about our approach. This is very much about people and wildlife, and encouraging people to make the most of their special green spaces. And this ties directly into, obviously, the Northbrook and our proposal and for the shared vision for this area. But I'll go back to what I was talking about at the start. And this is our aerial view of Exeter looking north. It's probably in one of the most wildlife-rich locations in the country. It's internationally recognised. These have the top level of designation from Special Area of Conservation, Special Protection Area, Special Scientific Interest, and that funnels up into Exeter. These are the green lands of the city. We have all of these network of natural infrastructure, which we all are extremely proud of. And they're really well used as well. Just the Valley Parks alone, we estimate around 500,000 people are accessing them per year. That's a tremendous number. A lot of people obviously use them for commuting routes, but also just for their own health and well-being, to be able to step into these really tranquil green spaces. And as we zoom in just a little bit further, this is the Northbrook Approach site, which is highlighted in the green outline there. But we've got the Riverside Valley Park, which is a really high carrying capacity site. It's obviously really popular, a lot of visitor traffic which is using that. And then to the northeast there, you've got Ledwell Valley Park, which is like stepping into the most rural Devon countryside. Between the two, we have probably one of the most strategically located sites in terms of the Northbrook Approach golf course. From a cultural access perspective, it's crucial in terms of connecting the two areas of green space. But this is a critical corridor for wildlife as well, to be able to move through, and it's all connected by the Northbrook, or the Panning as it's locally known. So huge numbers of visitors and wildlife which are using the main X and the canal area moving through. But that's the connection that we really want to bolster. And the Northbrook, as I've said, holds this really key strategic position in the landscape. Just to give you a flavour, I mean, Ludwell, as I said, you can step out of some of our most urban areas of the city into quintessentially rural Devon countryside, rolling hills. And I don't know of any city that has that sort of resource on their doorstep. It provides us with some the resources for some very rare species like seal buntings. Otters use the Northbrook. We see kingfishers moving up through there. This is a real hotspot, and then that should be, and we can improve the connectivity to Riverside, as I've said, one of our busiest areas, but also really, really wildlife rich, and a major corridor for people and wildlife moving through the city. And so, in terms of the shared vision, partly it's talking about the access potential here. At the moment, the Tottenham Road presents quite a psychological barrier for people moving between the two areas of green space. It's obviously a very busy road, and the Northbrook is, to a degree, the approach golf course being off limits for general public to be able to access, appreciate quiet recreation. So, in terms of the proposal, we're looking at bolstering those connections at Pelican Crossing there at the very north, bringing people directly into the site through year-round all abilities access trails, so that they can go immediately into that green space rather than following the crematorium access road. As you go just a bit further south, we've got what is an extremely rare resource in the Valley Parks, and that's a car park. This isn't potentially in the future somewhere where you would just expect day-to-day visitors to be using the car park, but it's a really safe place to be able to bring children, community groups and others to have a place there that could be a future hub location where you could have educational activities and community events, and provide those sorts of facilities and off-road parking. And the other two connections are further to the south and the west, and they're the key connections through that landscape that we would bolster as part of the proposal. And that's what we'd like to look like. So at the moment, as a result of this golf course background. We've got that quite gently undulating landscape. It's already studded with trees, but the grassland could be made much more wildlife rich. So if you like planting a huge amount of wildflowers in that area to make it look like that image on the left, getting new standard trees planted, and have that parkland feel. But as wild as possible. This isn't about it being a closely mown, manicured area, although there would be patches like that to people's picnic and so on. But it's about people getting a real taste of a really wild parkland area. Thinking about the potential for there to be a community orchard to connect people more directly with the land that they have, get produce from it, and get the community actively involved. So those are the sorts of things that we have as part of the vision. And there's the much maligned Northbrook. There are concerns about water quality, and it's a very heavily canalised and in-channel stream. In this area, it's quite heavily shaded. I mean, it's a lovely resource to walk alongside, but it could be so much more. And thinking about really catalysing, invigorating natural processes in that area, allowing that stream to break out the bank and giving people the opportunity to get close to water, rather than it being just out, to the side of you, deep down in the channel. And these are things that people have done with huge success in London on some of the tributary streams that go into the Thames. In effect, rewiggling the streams, and using communities and volunteers to plant emergent plants and making that a real thriving wildlife resource. That animals can move through the landscape, but also people can quietly enjoy as well. So just in terms of the outcomes, this is about a space which is much more accessible all year round, more welcoming, generating that local sense of ownership and pride, which is so crucial. Some people feel a bit disconnected from some of the parks, but getting them actively involved in the outset of a site which is new, and getting them involved in that process and consultation is going to be key to success. It's about having more active and healthy communities, and absolute havens for wildlife. And these things can be achieved with the right sort of management. And crucially, this is about getting our sites bigger, much more wildlife rich, and fundamentally well connected together. And that's for people and wildlife. And then add significant value to all of Exeter's green spaces. We in the paper we talked about, I suppose, some of the more traditional approaches and very successful approaches in terms of consultation. In terms of the partnership work that we're proposing is actually also running alongside that a number of community consultation events and activities. Get people out into these spaces and engage in terms of these events about what people feel about the future of these areas, whether they share the vision, what would they like to see the future of those areas hold. We're really open to all input and suggestions over that area. We have a strong vision, we think, but we're really open to the communities influencing, supporting, and adapting that as we go through the process. But just to finish off, this is very much about us, with a shared vision with the City Council. In terms of the future management and how that might work, that's not in any way set in stone. So it's about how does the community want to engage, how do they want to be involved, and in terms of the provision, seeking what additional sources of funding might be available, perhaps through, for example, SANGS funding associated with GUEST, or a whole range of other potential grant sources of funding as well. So our involvement at this stage is working with the City Council in the partnership that we already have done to reach out to the community and get their input in a really meaningful way about what the future of Northbrook will hold.
Thank you very much. That's a good presentation, and I think we all feel that's exactly what we set out to do. We said we were going to do this, and we are doing it. We're now on the next stage of consultation. I can't think of a better organisation to deliver that for us through it. And I'm really pleased. And if any of them are listening or watching, just thank you for the emails I've received last year, and even more importantly, the recent emails I've received thanking us for doing this. We said we would listen, and we've carried that out. Is there anybody else who'd like to make a contribution on this one? Councillor Hussain.
Yes, I am very, very pleased to see that presentation. It's as a councillor of Priory, I was sitting on, I was a recipient of many of the letters last year and recipient of several of the letters for this year about how the council has engaged and fulfilled its promises from last year. I'm very pleased as I said, as a Priory councillor, and I have a lot of good news to disseminate to my constituents. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harding.
Thank you. When we set up our arrangement with the Wildlife Trust way back in last year, several people were questioning as to what advantages it would bring to the City Council and to the residents of Exeter. And why didn't we just do it ourselves and carry on with it? Well, I think what Peter has just walked us through demonstrates admirably exactly why we partnered with the Devon Wildlife Trust. They brought to the table and to us things that we couldn't do ourselves. They brought skills, knowledge, experience, acumen, a relationship with the community. All those sorts of things have been brought. And it is not for the benefit of the people sat around this table, but it's for the benefit of the residents of Exeter. And that is what we're here for, and that's what we're doing. So I'd like to say that I think that this particular project has demonstrated the value of our relationship with the Wildlife Trust, and I hope and other issues that we're involved with, the ash dieback issue, for example, and other issues that we're involved with, that we continue in the same vein to ensure that we deliver the best possible outcomes for the citizens of Exeter.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Williams.
I fully support what Councillor Harding and Councillor Hussain said. However, the main thing I want to point out is that on the report, I'd like to draw people's attention to the fact that we've now got a standard item called carbon footprint environmental implications at point 12, and I think that's a great development in our standard reporting structure so that we can clearly see how we are helping to achieve our 2030 net zero carbon target.
Okay. Yes, a very good point. So, if there's nobody else, as I say, it's an excellent walk, as opposed to, as it said, golf was a good walk and spoiled, and now it can be a good walk. So, all those in favour of the recommendation, please show. I think that's unanimous.
That's unanimous, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I'm pleased with that. So we move on now to item 7. I'm taking the items involving David Hodson so he can get himself away. But thanks for coming.
Thank you.
And crack on, good work. So David, we've got item 7. This is the General Fund HRA estimates and capital programme. And you've got a few recommendations there. Would you like to talk us through them, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is the report that ultimately Council on the 25th of February will enable you to set the council tax for the City of Exeter for 2020-2021. I'd just like to, before I go through the recommendations, just give some of the background to this year's budget. Firstly, the government were unable to complete their formula grant review in time for this year's settlement, so they have provided a rollover settlement, which means that we have been given a 1.6% increase, our first increase since I've been Section 151 officer. Interesting to note, if you look at Appendix 1, every council has got exactly the same percentage increase, which is the first time ever in the history of the local government finance settlement. Secondly, the government have confirmed new homes bonus, and we will receive £2.49 million next year for the new homes bonus, making a total of 25.7 million that's been received by the council from new homes bonus since its inception in 2011-12. Sadly, they have indicated that new homes bonus will be coming to an end. The amount for this year is a 1-year settlement only, which indicates that new homes bonus will be reduced over the next 3 years down to 0 to be replaced by something else. It is local government money, so it will remain within local government. It's yet to be determined how it will be passed over to the councils. In terms of the capital programme, we have a significant capital programme again next year being proposed, £27 million in respect of the General Fund capital programme and £28 million in respect of the housing revenue account. And that, quite nicely, consists of £14 million in respect of improvements to the council's existing housing stock and £14 million towards the provision of new council homes. That means that the impact on the HRA is quite a significant take from the HRA working balance, which has been planned within the HRA's medium-term financial plan and still leaves the HRA with a forecast available balance after taking into account the £4 million they set aside of £2.3 million. All this means that the council's proposing, if you recommend tonight, proposing a council tax of £160 and 5 pence for a Band D property in 2020-21, which is an increase of £5. And just to end on a slightly downbeat note, I would remind members that within the medium-term financial plan, whilst this year we can deliver a balanced budget, there is a need to identify reductions of 3.7 million over the following 3 years of the medium-term financial plan. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions.
Yeah, before we go into that, just to remind me, because I've got a councillor who wants to make a statement, £5, is that £5 a year or £5 a week?
It's £5 for the year increase.
10p. Right, we've got a statement now. Councillor Diana Moore, if you'd like to come forward and make your statement.
Thank you very much. I would like to receive more information about the provisional sums that are potentially identified on page 34 of item 7 in relation to the borrowing, potential for need for borrowing by the leisure centre contract provider, and would such a loan be on a full commercial rate. I would like to know whether best value analysis has been undertaken of running the leisure contract in-house compared to an external operator, and whether I could be provided with more information about the extent of the identified structural problems at the riverside, which requires a potential further capital budget allocation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. What I will intend to do, I think you've had a response from one of the directors in relation to the riverside. Some of these other things, I'll make sure that David Hodgson gets a response to you in some way. But thank you for your statement anyway. Okay, so we're back now to the recommendation. You've heard David. Any contributions on the recommendations? No? Okay. Item 7, recommendations. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. So we'll move on now to...
Sorry, that's unanimous vote, Chair.
Very relieved. Item 8, which is another report of the Chief Finance Officer, and this is on the reports about to approve the capital strategy. David Hodgson.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the capital strategy is a statutory report required by government from each local authority. This is the second year we've had to produce one. There are no changes from last year's strategy, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Any remarks by anybody? No? Okay, those are the recommendations of item 8. All those in favour, please show.
That's unanimous vote, Chair.
Thank you. We now move on to item 9, which is another report of the Chief Finance Officer, which is the Prudential Code for Capital Finance in Local Authorities. David Hodgson.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, there's two parts to this. Again, another statutory report that we're required to produce. Two parts to this: the Prudential Code, which will ask you to approve the indicators. Those indicators are set to ensure that our capital programme is prudent and affordable for the council. And secondly, the annual statement of minimum revenue provision, which sets the policy for how we will repay our debt, and that's another requirement that we have to set. If I take the second one first, the minimum revenue provision, no changes in our policy, so we currently repay debt according to the life of assets, and therefore we're proposing to continue that. That will give us approximately an MRP charge for 2020-21 of £1.2 million. Now, I want to highlight to members the reason that that's significantly higher than the previous year is because we've changed the way that we get vehicles. So rather than purchasing vehicles directly, we now lease the vehicles, and a proportion of the lease payment we make is classed as an MRP payment. So that's the reason why that's quite significantly higher than previously. I would also like to highlight on page 76 that the council has made voluntary repayments of debt totalling £5.02 million. If we then turn to the prudential indicators themselves, and if I could draw members' attention to page 88, there are 3 indicators that are really critical for members to consider when they're determining whether to approve these indicators. And those are the capital financing requirements on page 88, the authorised limit, and on the following page, the operational boundary. Now, the capital financing requirement is the council's underlying need to borrow. So that's the amount of assets that we have that we haven't funded through capital receipts or through revenue. And as you will see, it's estimated at the end of 2020-21 that will total £174.5 million for the council, split between general fund and HRA. The authorised limit is the total amount that I am legally allowed to borrow on behalf of the City Council, and we're proposing that set at £230 million, which equals the capital financing requirement but leaves some headroom for future potential HRA, new council building, and any potential additional loans required as part of the Exeter City Living business plans that come forward. The operational boundary is a slightly lower figure, £210 million. The difference between the two is that the slightly higher figure allows us to have some leeway for day-to-day borrowing for cash flow purposes. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, any questions for David? No? Okay. All those in favour of the recommendations, please show.
It's unanimous, Chair. That's nice.
Thank you, Mark. Move on to item 10, which is another one from the Chief Finance Officer, Treasury Management Strategy Report for the next 2 years. David.
Thank you, Chair. Again, this is the final statutory report which forms the overall bundle for setting next year's budget. The Treasury Management Strategy sets the strategy for our placing of money, investments, and also our borrowing strategy. There are no changes to last year in terms of the way that we propose to place our funds. What I would like to highlight to members, though, on page 98, there are examples of where we currently have funds placed, and we've started using 2 new accounts. The Barclays Green account, which links directly to projects in pursuit of the transition to a lower carbon economy. And secondly, the Standard Chartered Sustainable Deposits Guarantee, which guarantees that the investment is referenced against sustainable assets aligned to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. I thought members might be interested in that, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, David. Any questions or observations? No? Okay, all those in favour of recommendation 10, please show.
I see no unanimous vote, Chair.
Thank you, David. I don't think we've got anything more for you this evening. If you did want to excuse yourself, feel free to do so. And I wanted to take Peter, Burgess and yourself because they were Rachel. I was going to ask the portfolio Deputy Leader Rachel to make a statement in relation to many queries, and it has got a bit of press interest and interest. A little bit different, but I think this is the forum to say it. Rachel, if you can make a brief statement on.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you for the opportunity. Some of you may have noticed that there's been some press attention, both nationally and internationally, in fact, around discussions about some of the Blackfoot people's regalia, which is currently part of the Royal Albert Memorial Museum's collection. Contrary to some of the statements in the paper, we had a formal request to repatriate this regalia in 2015, and this was following on from conference attendance by a member of staff and discussions that were opened with the Exeter people and the Blackfoot people about the regalia and the potential for repatriating it back to Canada. And I just want to say that that in principle there is absolutely no difficulty in considerations of this kind of thing. We have in fact repatriated materials to other cultures around the world in the past. So discussions are ongoing about this, but it is very much the case that we hope to have a successful conclusion to these negotiations, and the formal process will come to, paper will come to this executive in June and then go to council in July for a final decision. But I really wanted to reassure people that those discussions are open and ongoing, and we currently are waiting for a response to some of our correspondence with various parties in Canada, but I will keep you updated. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. And I think it was important to make that statement here this evening, because we've been asked to do the right thing, we will do the right thing, we have done the right thing, and that's what we intend to do. Thank you again, Rachel. We'll move on to item 11 now, which is the annual pay policy statement, and I will ask Councillor Wood to read the recommendations and then go on to put us in on the.
Thank you, Chair. This report is a statutory report, and it's an annual pay policy statement which must be made and approved by the full council each financial year, in line with the legislation Localism Act 2011. The recommendations before us are that the executive recommends to council to approve the attached policy, report and appendices to be adopted and published in accordance with the legislation. Then 2, delegated authority be given to the City Solicitor and Head of HR to make necessary amendments to the pay policy statement following any changes in legislation or subsequent increases in pay.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Wood. Bob, would you like to add anything?
Thank you very much, Chair. As Councillor Wood stated, this is a report that you've seen for several years. It's a statutory responsibility, and what that requires us to set out is the pay for chief officers and defining who the chief officers are. the pay for the lowest paid staff and defines who those are, and the relationship between the two. And if you look at page 117, appendix 1, that sets out that information very clearly to you, which sets out the chief officer pay, the lowest paid staff, effectively the operators, and the relationship between the two. So that's what I wanted to say, unless anybody has a question after this.
Thank you. Are we all, any questions? No? All those in favour of the recommendations on item 11, please show.
That's unanimous vote, Chair.
Thank you. So it's another one, if I can ask Councillor Wood to read the recommendations on item 12, which is the gender pay gap report. Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Chair. This is another statutory report, and it looks at the gender pay gap, and it's under regulations, the Equality Act 2010, and it requires local authorities who employ over 250 or more employees to produce a gender pay gap report. And the Act requires an authority must report on the following information: their mean gender pay, the median gender pay gap, their mean bonus gender pay gap, their median bonus gender pay gap, proportion of males receiving bonuses, their proportion of females receiving bonuses, and their proportion of males and females in each quartile pay grade. So quite a detailed analysis comparing the difference of pays between the genders. So the recommendations here are that this report will be reviewed annually to track the relationship between both male and female earnings, and the Council will publish its gender pay gap report on the Exeter City Council website, as well as on the centrally held database on gov.uk.
Thank you. Paul, you want to add anything?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. Obviously, this is legislation brought into place by the government to make the gap between working females and males apparent and obvious to everyone, and that's why it's required all employees who take on more than 250 staff to publish that information. I think I should just highlight to you that that calculation is done on the basis of a snapshot in time. That snapshot in time for us is taken on the 31st of March annually, so these figures are based on 31st of March 2019. And the headline figures, again, are shown on page 1, 2, 3. And for us, I think you can say that this is a good news item, because it shows very clearly that in Exeter City Council, on average, the female pay is actually more than the male pay. So you'll see that on average, females get paid £14 and 2 pence, and the males get paid £13 and 32 pence. And if you see on as a graph at the bottom of page 1, 2, 3, it shows you where everybody sits in relation to quartiles. So you'll see that in the lower quartile there is a large majority of males. So 72% of the lowest paid are male, compared to 27% for females. In the lower middle quartile, that trend reverses. You'll see that 51% of males are paid higher than females at 48%. The upper middle, again, that trend reverses. We keep going backwards and forwards. So in the upper middle quartile, more females at 61% are paid at a higher rate than males at 38.57%. And you'll see that the upper pay of the chief officer, essentially, it's about 50-50 there or thereabouts.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. Those percentages, 48-52, reminds me of rather a lot. So, does anybody want to make a comment on any of these or contribution? Councillor Hussain, Councillor Wood, will you come in at the end?
Well, I'm just going to record my, I'm very pleased to hear that Exeter City Council is one of the leading councils in pay gender equality, if not more, actually going beyond and above the equalities for females. So I'm very pleased to see that, and I hope it continues, not just a snapshot in 31st of March last year. I hope it continues all through. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Sutton.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, again, welcome this report. Without being complacent, I think it is significant that there are a vast number of employees out there who could do well to look at this. But I think also it kind of speaks to the importance and strength of trade unions in all organisations, because I'm quite sure that at least part of this is down to strong, effective relationships between the management and trade unions in negotiating rates of pay appropriate for tasks, rather than people coming in and getting bonus payments and different staff differentials. And there are large organisations who are kind of getting the pushback from having made those mistakes in the past. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's nobody else, I'll ask Councillor Wood to wind up.
Thank you. I think one of the things I would mention about this and the previous report is the structure and the analysis that goes into making sure that our staff are paid appropriately and in line with market forces, and that evidences that we get good value for money in the staff that we employ. But it is at an appropriate level to secure the skill sets that we need. There's some very specialist roles that go on within this council, and it is appropriate that people are paid the right level for that. But the key thing I wanted to really point out in this report was, of course, there is a soundbite, a bite that says that our female staff on average are paid more than our male staff, but it also says that that gap has increased over the previous year. It was 2.25% to now 5.25%. So not only paid more, but getting more. Thank you.
Okay. If there's nobody else, all those in favour of that recommendation, please show.
That's unanimous vote, Chair.
Thank you. We're now going to go back in time. Need that figure. And go back in time to item 6. And I'm going to ask Councillor Morse to read the recommendations. Just read the recommendation. Then I'm going to ask Councillor Moore to come in to make a statement. Then I will come back to you, Councillor Morse, and then to Bindu. Yes. Just to say that Councillor Morse will be making a revision to 2.1 effectively. So 2.2 will remain, but you will read that one out and then we'll try to do it. So over to you, Councillor.
Yes, right, thank you. What views on this active? Okay, the recommendation on recommendation 2.1 is the executive recommends to council that the decision on whether the PSPO be extended to delegate to the relevant director, in consultation with the portfolio holder, say that 1, if any such order is made to extend, that such extension be limited to a period of 12 months, and 2, that the director is satisfied that the necessary consultation required by the ASPCP Act 2014 has been carried out, and 3, that the director is satisfied that there is sufficient evidence that the conditions for the making of the order are established. And 2.2, executive recommends that the council resolves to continue the current policy of funding received by the council from fixed penalty notices issued for the breach of the PSPO to be ring-fenced for initiatives to address antisocial behaviour, and that this funding continue to be administered through the Exeter Community Safety Partnership.
Right, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Moore, if you wish to speak under section 44, make a statement.
Thank you. I'd like to understand a bit more about the figures that have been presented, as the PSPO mainly covers St David's ward. I'd like to know of the 120 incidents of dispersal, how many of these occurrences were the same people being required to disperse on more than one occasion? And of the 13 prosecutions undertaken for breaches of the PSPO and 128 dispersals, how many of these people have no fixed abode? Antisocial behaviour in the city centre is an ongoing problem, not just for visitors and businesses, but also the residents that live there. The figures relating to the PSPO have been quoted to residents, but in themselves do not provide any evidence of tackling the problems. I have been told that the Community Safety Partnership works strategically and not with communities because it has no resources. And as a councillor, I am pleased that I'm able to speak to the chair of the CSP directly, but it's hard for members of the public to find out what the Community Safety Partnership has been doing. For example, I couldn't find any meeting notes on the council's website. So I'd like to know what meaningful action is or is planned to be undertaken between agencies, and also to work with communities to tackle antisocial behaviour in the city centres, with the city centres' many residential communities. And as a starting point, how has or is the £3,700 income been or will be spent directly for community benefit, so directly in communities to address antisocial behaviour in the PSPO area?
Right, thank you, Councillor Moore, for your statement. Moving back now to the Councillor Morse has made a revised recommendation. I'm going to second that to get it rounded for you. So if you want to talk to the recommendation that you're moving, and then we'll take it from there, and then Barn may want to come in with some other detail. Okay, Councillor Morse. Simon.
Antisocial behaviour across the city, and more specifically in the city centre, is a very difficult thing to manage, and is managed not only by the City Council but by many different services. And it's important that we understand that the PSPO is just one tool in that system. Now, we altered the recommendation because we, as a local authority, have been looking at this as an issue, and to see that while some progress is being made with the PSPO, and we think it's sufficient progress, we would like to see more done. And in some communities across the city and that are covered by this PSPO, that it's been a blunt tool that does not address all of the issues, and that there should probably be more versions of the PSPO but for smaller areas. But we don't know all of that, and we don't have any evidence to support that, and we are not the only authority that should be making any decisions on that. And as such, I have been in consultation with officers at the council for a good while, and the leader and the chief executive, about how we should manage that and how we should move forward. So the recommendation is been altered based on the City Council's plans to organise a leadership summit on city centre antisocial behaviour, and to look at some other urban antisocial behaviours across the wider city. This will engage with the relevant bodies so that we all understand what we mean by that, and we all know what we want to fix. Dates for that will come forward in the future, and I think this Act, in the meantime, this PSPO extended just to cover for the year while we come to a conclusion of do any processing that we may or may not to change the PSPO, or to have any at all, would be a very good and wise idea.
Thank you. Simon, is there anything to the report and or the recommendation that you wish to add?
Only thing I wish to add, Chair, is to bring the committee's attention to the fact we've received a number of pieces of correspondence. In support of the proposal, we've received communication from Superintendent Anthony Hart, who's the local policing area commander for Exeter, East and Med Devon, on behalf of the Chief Constable, the Police and Crime Commissioner for Devon, Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly, Alison Hernandez, and Dr Phil Norrie, the Chief Executive of Devon County Council. Also, to make this committee aware that this afternoon we have received correspondence from Liberty, who are not in support of the PSPOs, full stop.
Okay, thank you. It's very important there what Councillor Morse has said in relation to the summit. And many people will know, well, for those who care to read my missives in the Express and Echo, I've made it clear that we want to do something different in relation to what I regard as urban antisocial behaviour. We want to look at street attachment and homelessness. I mean, it's fantastic that the team have secured some funding of 917. These are all things, and what we're doing, it's a good record. We need to re-evaluate and re-look, and that is why we've been discussing with church groups at Exeter, a number of other organisations who do a lot of work for us, working with us in Exeter. And so we are having a proposal for a City Leadership Summit on city centre and antisocial behaviour. This is already coming along, and the brief is the council will be looking at for a supplier to design and deliver a leadership summit to deliver a report which sets out a shared understanding of the complex underlying issues faced by Exeter Street attached communities and individuals, a common purpose to collaborate across the whole system to co-design and implement sustainable solutions to entrenched problems, an underpinning set of guiding principles and values to guide collaboration, a clear set of commitments and promises by which we can hold each other to account, a resource action plan and clear actions, milestones and timelines designing, testing and implementing sustainable systems change. All this is going to take time. We said we were committed to it, we're going to be committed to that, and we will be working with people and organisations to bring that about. What we need is this arrangement for 12 months to carry on, and we will be looking at it all. We're starting that consultation process almost all over again on what we need to do. I'm proud of what we do in Exeter to date, but I believe we all feel that when we walk down our high street and we're still seeing people in doorways, not that we don't want to see them, but we just feel we should be helping and supporting people, and that's what this council is absolutely determined to do, and this summit will be doing. So I hope you will support this amendment by Councillor Morse to the main document. It's an important step forward. So that's what I have to say. Anybody else would like to make a contribution on this? Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Chair. I think one of the things I'd just like to say is I was on the scrutiny committee where this first arrived, and there was a lot of very, very careful consideration gone into when this was first set up. There was a lot of controversy about it at the time, still is. But this council was very careful about the conditions and the shape with which it put its PSPO out. There was a lot of bad press went to poorly configured PSPOs used for social cleansing, was one term used. This is not in the same realm. And when I look at the information in 8.6, the number of antisocial behaviour logs recorded by the police are incredibly high numbers. But when you look at the actions taken using the PSPO, 37 fixed penalty notices, 128 people dispersed, 13 prosecutions. But in 8.6 we're talking about thousands of antisocial behaviour logs. And that really, for me, highlights what Councillor Morse was saying about how it is a tool, not the only mechanism used to try and address antisocial behaviour, and certainly not even in the toolkit of the ways that we work with the homeless and street attached people and how we try and help them to find solutions to their problems. The PSPO is not about homeless people, it's about antisocial behaviour.
Thank you, Councillor Wood, and as I say, we hope that summit brings a lot of these things out. Councillor Fogg.
Thank you. Can the Chair confirm that Standing Order 44 is a mechanism whereby councillors are asked to make a statement? Because it seems to me that it's being used as a means of asking questions in recent months.
Thank you. Yes, it is for a statement, but Councillor Moore has asked a couple of questions in that. I haven't answered those questions. I will ensure that she gets an answer to those. This is me being a bit soft as usual and trying to have an open door. We want to listen, we want to. You are quite right, it is for statements. We heard the statements. Councillor Moore asked a couple of questions. I'll make sure she gets those answers in writing. They will be recorded in the minutes, and also the same with item 7 that she raised a couple. I will ensure that. At the end of the day, when a councillor sits in the chair, as much as I would dearly love to be able to control what they say, I can't. And I don't really want to either, but point taken. I think Laura Wright wanted to, Councillor Wright wanted to come in. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I welcome the amendment made by Councillor Morse, and also really pleased to hear that I know you've been discussing this for quite some time about having a summit where we do look at different ways of dealing with a problem that has become more and more complex. It already started off as a complex problem. It's not just about street attached or just about drinkers or just about students weeing in people's gardens, and all of that comes into it. I'm looking at Diana because I know that happens in her area. But we do need to now start really talking about the complexities of it and looking at the wide picture. But I would just like to ask Chair that when that does happen with the summit and looking at everything, it's not just going to be the city centre, but St Thomas will also be included in that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. And every ward will tell me they've got issues, and this is what we've got to do, and they have got issues of antisocial behaviour, and there's something got to be done. And I don't mean that in a sort of bad way, but we've got to help people who are willing to accept help, and that will always be a challenge, but we're going to rise to that challenge. Okay, so can I put to you the recommendations as amended by Councillor?
Can I just confirm back in the minutes, Councillor Moore has proposed to make the change and you have seconded it? Oh, sorry.
Yes, I did, yes. Right. Thank you. Everyone on minds now. Okay. All right. So all those in favour of the recommendation as amended, show. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. That concludes the end of the